Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Crusaders. We're in the first stream here. That's with two people here. That one person's not actually in here. It's a virtual stream, but glad you guys. This is Maile here from Brown-Forman. Really appreciate having me. Talking about sustainability, which of course is obviously very important to all of us here in whiskey, because if we don't have trees, we don't have the grains being redone on a regular basis. No more whiskey for us, which sucks. So, I'll introduce yourself and talk a little bit about that, and let's go from there.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. You've already touched on it. If we don't have grains and wood, then we don't have our product, and that sucks. So what an easy way to kind of describe what we do. But I'm from I'm from Brown-Forman. I'm a sustainability manager there. Brown-Forman, if you don't know who we are, you probably know some of our products, but we were started in 1870. We are America's largest owned global spirits brand. And we have a lot of really great products: Jack Daniel's, Woodford Reserve, Old Forester, and a bunch of other ones. So sustainability, you might not think about it from this context of a whiskey company. And sometimes when I tell people what I do, they're like, really? You work for a whiskey brand doing sustainability? And
It's really important.
Absolutely. It's so important. Like you've already touched on that. Really, if we want to make sure that the resources that we have now that go into our products, we have to make sure that we have these resources in the future. At Brown-Forman, we really do rely on the natural resources, whether it's our grains that go into our products, the water that we transform into the spirits, the white oak that we have for our barrels. We certainly rely on all of these natural resources. We have to make sure that we take care of them now, that we take care of the communities that we share them with so we can have them in the future. So we as a company in 2021 put out really ambitious sustainability goals to make sure that we have this roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years so that we can support our positive environmental impact, reduce our negative impact. And really it comes down to is making sure that what we have now we'll have in the future, and our communities will have that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess probably the first place probably start would be barrels, and I guess our most important thing for obviously for whiskey. So what kind of like forestry programs are you guys doing for sustainability?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I have a pretty cool position. I'm working on the supply chain sustainability side. So I get to focus on all of the sustainability of what starts on the product from the white oak and the greens all the way to the end with our consumers. And it really starts with so much of it is with that barrel. White oak is so important. It's the primary material to make barrels, which we know imparts that characteristic flavor and color for our products. But beyond that, white oak is also really important for our ecosystems and for forest health in general. And that when we manage for white oak, we're actually managing for the full ecosystem, making sure that we have biodiversity, supporting soil health and water quality. And so it's important for our products, but it's also really important for ecosystems in general. And we're doing a lot in forestry, and actually a lot of other brands are in this space too, because it's important. So one thing that we do is we are a founding member of the White Oak Initiative, which is an alliance of partners that is committed to conserving and supporting white oak sustainability of America's white oak forest, and also all the environmental, social, and economic benefits that come with this, with white oak. We know it's important, but it's important more than an environmental perspective in itself. And the group, the White Oak Initiative, put out an assessment and conservation plan pretty recently, about 18 months ago, talking about how we can improve white oak sustainability. And really, most critically, what this report said and what Brown-Forman, if we're looking at it, is that if we don't do something today, without intervention today, white oak is going to decline in the next 10 to 15 years. And there'll be more significant declines after that. So that's a really big risk to our business, and it's a risk to the industry too. And that's why it's great that we have this alliance, the White Oak Initiative, that can start to put together action plans. And so at Brown-Forman, when we talk about sustainable forestry, we build on what the white oak says and the research that's been done so that we can make sure that we're following science and we're following the research and we're aligning really across our industry. So right now we are actually evaluating our wood supply chain, and we're putting together official and new updated sustainable forestry targets that we then can announce to the public. That doesn't mean that we're not doing stuff in sustainable forestry.
Right.
We're actually doing a lot. And I'm really proud of so much of the work that we've done. So much of it is community-based, and it's really designed to support the forests that we have in white oak that we have today and we have in the future. So in a couple years ago, we created the Old Forester Tree Nursery. It's in collaboration with the University of Kentucky Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And it's a 5-acre plot of land that we planted. We did the last planting about a year ago at our Brown-Forman distillery. And it's the first urban and genetic seedling study. And so what's going to happen is over the next 15 years, we'll take the research from this. We planted like little trees and they're growing, and it's so cool to see. We can measure them every time we go to learn what success of acorns, what conditions of acorns, what characteristics are going to be important for survival, so that then we can support regeneration of white oak forest for the future, because that's ultimately what we want. Is we have white oak forests now. We really need to make sure that we have them in the future too, so that we can keep making barrels. We can keep making our products with those barrels.
Any idea? I mean, I know it's probably a crazy number. Like, how many acres? Do you guys own your guys' own forests? Do you guys usually rent them? Because I know some of the Scotch distilleries own their forests essentially. So you guys can, like, how many acreages does it usually take, like, just to get a barrel in general? Like, when you guys are cutting down and then replacing, I guess, how fast do you go back and then reseed? For I know obviously it takes another 60 to 100 years to grow those trees, obviously. So it's not like it's basically the trees we plant today are really not for us. They're for our grandchildren to get whiskey in reality. So.
Yeah, exactly. You've hit on something really important, that in sustainability, it can be challenging, but it's also an opportunity that the work that we're doing right now, we don't necessarily see an impact tomorrow in this, especially in forestry. And that's kind of an ethos that we have to take into consideration, that I might not necessarily be doing this myself so that I can have a glass of whiskey tomorrow, or a friend can buy it next week. It's so that generations from now, we can continue to enjoy these products. So back to your technical question, though, it's a really good question. I know it's a really good question because it's something that I am doing right now at my job, is to figure out that exact question, which is really how much acreage do we need that goes for either one specific tree or for all of our products. So we have a general understanding of what that might be, but I'm still working on that. And it's important, though, because we need to make sure that we have a guidepost for some of this work, so that we have goals that are feasible, but also they're really ambitious, because this is a risk and we need to make sure that we're taking into account that accurate risk. And that's how so much of sustainability that I see is, I want to make sure that we can have these products forever.
Yes, we do too. It's nothing like that forever. We appreciate it. Just let the audience know. Say hi to Andy, and I know Mike's in here, and Steve and Ben. Starting on some Old Forester 86 tonight. Of course, an awesome standard Brown-Forman product that I really enjoy. So I figure you guys join in the chat and hopefully drinking some Brown-Forman products with us here. So in your average tree you're cutting down for a barrel, any idea what the age is on average you guys are using for those?
Good question. I think typically an old tree is 60 to 70 years.
We're using
but really, to give you an exact answer, I'd have to go digging to make sure. Because a lot of the work that I do is technical, I'm always hesitant to give out an exact answer unless I can do my research. But I know that they're older trees typically, and that's really the issue of what we're seeing in white oak sustainability right now, is that older trees are not being replaced with younger trees because of shifts in land management and ecological changes. And that's really what's having the negative impact. And what we're focused on is making sure that these young trees eventually can start replacing the old trees, so that we can have, so that then in 60 to 70, 40 to 70 years, we'll be able to harvest them to make into products.
That's right. To make the good stuff.
Exactly.
All right. So now your water sources, that are most of those fairly close to the trees? Does that have a lot to do with it, or is your water completely different from where your trees are grown at the moment?
So our water sources would be at our production sites.
Okay.
So you asked if we have our own forest, and the answer is no. We We don't own the forests that we get the white oak trees that make the barrels. But those are from the general regions of where white oak is grown across the eastern part of the United States. So our water, though, is local resources. We don't truck water in to make sure that we use it. It's really local. So in Jack Daniels, then that means the water actually comes from the limestone caves that's beneath and around Jack Daniels. And it's typically groundwater that's coming from right around the distilleries.
Okay, that works. Now, so how do you guys like, hey, listen, since you have obviously a distillery there, what do you guys do to protect the water source you guys are using from, any runoff or things that you're actually doing at the distillery there, since obviously that's your other second most important thing after what is obviously the water source?
Yeah, exactly. You've hit on our really key, what we need to make our products. So we've talked about the wood and the water and the grain and agriculture commodities is really what we rely on and what we put into the product. So water is so critical, and any beverage company would say that. So I didn't actually mention Brown-Forman sustainability goals at the very beginning, but we do have sustainability goals in 6 different areas that were announced in 2021. And they are in climate action, water stewardship, circularity, sustainable packaging, sustainable agriculture. And then, like I mentioned, we're updating our sustainable forestry targets. So these 6 sustainability commitments really is our roadmap to the future of how we can make sure that we protect our resources that we share with our community so we can have the resources in the future. So you've hit on one. Water stewardship is one of our main sustainability commitments and one of our pillars. And our goal by 2030 is to achieve water balance in at-risk watersheds. So for us, a lot of the focus actually has not been for our North American whiskeys thus far, though we do have some focus in there. It's been in our at-risk sites, which is where we deemed our higher risk for water stress. And a lot of the focus has actually been in Mexico, but we are putting together specific plans that focus on reuse, water efficiency, and collaborations and partnerships at that local level, which I think is so important around water because water is a shared resource with our communities. We pull from the same water resources. It's a finite resource. And so having these partnerships and collaboration is really important looking at that local level around water. And like I said, a lot of our focus thus far has been, where I have some examples to share, has been in Mexico because I know this is about whiskey, but we also have a tequila production site in Mexico where we actually put in a specialized wastewater treatment plant that ensures we meet water quality discharge standards, but also reduces fossil fuel emissions. So it's really in a circular system, in a loop there. And that's an example of really addressing one of the areas that we know is could be higher risk for water risk. We focus on water everywhere, though. We have water sustainability and site specific and efficiency plans. Actually on the whiskey side, at our Slane Irish whiskey, the team worked really hard there. We have great teams working on sustainability at all of our sites. They were actually able to reduce water consumption per liter of whiskey produced by 32% over a year period, just by focusing on water reuse and efficiency in production processes. So because we're a global company, we have we have focus areas like this globally. And we're definitely making strides just knowing how critical water is as this resource to make sure that we have enough of it, that we're replenishing it and focusing on water quality.
Okay, that's all. Yeah, that's wild. You guys reduce it that much. That's a huge difference in your water use there. So basically, you're creating treatment plants as soon as it goes through, and you're able to just reuse it. Any idea how long it takes before you get the water back through the treatment plant to be able to reuse it again?
No, that's a good question, though. I didn't actually oversee that project. It might be something on our website if you want to take a look at some point.
Cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And what's cool about this actually, and in general about sustainability, really is the innovation coming from this. That efficiency, and Brown-Forman's been focused on efficiency for a very long time. But beyond that, there are so many cool innovations around the technology that's coming on sustainability and on technological innovations that we're starting to see. So that was really a state-of-the-art facility that we had put in to be able to focus on that circular loop system. And I'm excited really to see what more innovations are going to come, what more research we have that we can learn from. I know that we employ research in our cooperages to reduce wood waste when we're actually making the barrels. So there's a lot of cool stuff in sustainability that's really around innovation that's super exciting.
So when you're saving wood, how in the coopers, how do they save the wood? How do they reduce the amount of wood they use?
It's a really good question. I am not an expert on this. They explained it to me because I led a sustainable forestry working group. I took notes on it, and I asked them if what notes I took is accurate process, and they said no, and then I had got it wrong. So I'm not the best person to ask on that. But it is interesting, and if I'm not the technical expert on it, I don't want to give you the wrong answer because I gave them my notes and they said that's actually not what happens.
It's all good. At least you tried, right?
Yeah, exactly. Part of the facilitation, going through some of the sustainability work.
Okay, so I know you talked about Mexico, so obviously you guys have tequila brands in there. So you guys doing a lot with, I guess, now do you guys wild harvest you guys agave, or do you guys have farms for the agave down there?
It is from farms. So Brown-Forman actually grows some of our own agave in Jalisco, Mexico. It is actually 99% deforestation-free certified, which is really exciting. And then the rest comes from farms in about a 5-state region, mostly centered around that Jalisco area, where the tequila production facility is.
Now, is there more or less agave now? Since obviously it's been a major tequila boom, obviously not just, obviously in Mexico, but in America, of course, is drinking a ton of tequila now. Are there a lot more farms you guys have had to plant in the last several years, or is that a problem, or it's just been good you guys are able to sustain planting more and more agave since that's needed for tequila?
Yeah, you've really hit the nail on the head that Americans are drinking a lot of tequila, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I like tequila, so I'm part of that too. I love it. And so we have certainly had to source more. Of course, as we have more production, we need more agriculture commodities. The same would go for any of our other products. We want to make more. We buy more of these agriculture commodities. So we do grow some of it ourselves. And the rest comes from farms. And I think that we've increased that sourcing, but there hasn't been an issue to the extent on that sourcing side. Of course, there's always things around price volatility, also a little bit over my head. I think because, though, that there has been more agave production and farms have been implementing it more, some of the state governments in Mexico are focusing more on deforestation and ensuring that when agave is produced, it is not coming from deforested lands. And so that's why Brown-Forman is also in Mexico focusing on making sure that our agave is certified deforestation free.
Okay, yeah. Rather than knocking a bunch of trees and planting agave, doesn't do us any good. Okay, that makes total sense. All right, that's cool. So Ben says, you may know this or may not, but do you know, are there barrels from Jack Daniel's being reused in tequila at all? Do you know that answer to that question?
Yes. Some of the barrels, I believe, do go down to our Casa Herradura facility. Very cool. That's when we talk about byproducts. This group, you and this audience knows well that barrels can only be used once. Right. And so that's not something that we're just going to throw away. One, that's not good from a sustainability perspective, but that's also not good from a cost perspective.
Sure.
To buy something and to throw it away once. And so we actually sell those barrels to other food and beverage manufacturers. And they can typically age their own products in them, or sometimes they're made into furniture.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you can find, I don't know if you'd be able to trace it going back to our specific product.
Sure, it's still cool.
I know that it's certainly made from rustic furniture, and mostly the food and beverage manufacturers are the ones who are reusing those. And then a barrel has, after we use it, it has another about 60 to 70 years of life.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Of course, you make this beautiful thing called scotch in it afterward, which we all appreciate. So
exactly.
Which is fantastic. So I'm going to switch to scotch. because of that, because it's Scotch and it's great. Yeah, so I'm gonna switch over to the Glengasset, the Sandana. That's won you guys Whiskey Advocate's best whiskey in the world there last year, so not too bad for you guys.
Yeah, that was an exciting designation.
Yeah, especially since you guys spent all this money and work to take them out from being mothballed into another distillery. Is awesome to get change the bottle. That bottle's beautiful. Yeah, it's just a great Scotch. It's a great story to reopen reopen an old distillery and do the right thing with it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story and it's a great product.
Absolutely. All right. So what's your let's see what's the next thing. Let's talk about farming of the corn and the barley. What are you guys doing for that for sustainability? And then we'll move into packaging, I think, after that.
Yeah, and I saw that we had a question in the chat about bottles that too. Yeah. Super happy to talk about. So agriculture is a really big focus, specifically for me and also for Brown-Forman. Personally, though, I've always been interested in sustainable agriculture and sustainable farming and farmers and rural livelihoods. And at Brown-Forman, we need to make sure that we have a resilient agricultural supply chain so that we can purchase quality grain or any other thing that we need for our products. So we have a pretty big focus in sustainable agriculture, and especially for some of the grains that go into our North American whiskeys. So you're drinking a few of those tonight. So I just led a project with our direct grain farmers in North America in calendar year 2023. And we developed a scorecard where we simply just wanted to learn more about what our farmers were already doing in terms of regenerative agriculture. Okay. So when I talk about sustainability in agriculture, really what I'm meaning is farming in a way that supports the land, it improves the land, it supports our farmers and their livelihoods, and it supports communities, especially rural communities. And on the environmental side, that really means that we're focusing on soil health, biodiversity, reducing our water usage, improving our water quality. And our farmers, really for the most part, they've been doing this work way before anything was talked about in a corporate sustainability report. They've been stewards of the land for a very, very long time. And it's always been important to me in the supply chain sustainability side that when we do something, we do it in conjunction with our supply chain partners, because I want to learn what they're already working on and how we can collaborate on that. And that's what this project was about. So we partnered with our farmers, mostly in Kentucky and Tennessee, our direct farmers, and learned all about the regenerative practices that they have. And it was super exciting to see so much great work that they've already been doing on soil health and improving water usage and supporting biodiversities and supporting owls and reducing fertilizer usage. And so that initiative now we're able to take internally as a company and really understand how we can scale some of these regenerative practices up to our entire broader supply chain, knowing that we still have more of an impact to make beyond our direct farmers. So I also work with so many of our suppliers, but a lot of my time is spent talking to farmers or spent even with other beverage companies, learning what they're doing, because we might source from the same watersheds and maybe even from the same farmers. So a couple of weeks ago, I was walking some of the wheat fields and the corn fields that ultimately will end up going into some of our products, really to see some of these regenerative practices that are supporting soil health. And to see the impact that it's able to make on the soil after it had rained 10 inches, it was able to be absorbed into the soil instead of running off into rivers. And so that's some of the areas that also supports communities, because then they have cleaner water because the soil is able to absorb some of that flood water. So regenerative agriculture, it's a really exciting area, and it's something that is important to Brown-Forman. And personally, it's important to me to be able to make sure that we are creating resilient agricultural systems that can extend into the future.
How does that work with you're talking with the regenerative, like say you said the 10 inches of rain was able to soak in? What are they doing with the soil to make it be able to do that rather than it, like you said, running off to a river?
Yeah, well, I don't know how technical you want me to get.
You can get super technical. We love nerdy stuff. So actually, I'd love to hear about how that works.
Yeah, so It really goes down to the soil organic matter that's actually
Okay.
in the soil. And there are things that we can do to be able to improve that.
Okay.
So we can put organic mulch, which is like compost on soil. We can make sure that the soil is covered throughout the year or most of the year. We can make sure that we don't till that soil. Tillage, it might means you rough up the soil either
Right.
typically with the machine every year.
Okay.
By not doing that and by putting cover crops, making sure it's covered, supporting the organic matter of the soil,
Mhm.
one, it's healthier soil is really what it comes down to. It absorbs water better and it also stores carbon. And so both of those things are really important from a climate action perspective, from a water quality perspective, and really a water usage perspective because it can store water better. It's absorbed into the roots more easily than if the soil was less healthy. Often it can just run off. There are some really interesting studies, even just pictures you can look at where you can see after floods soil that has a high organic matter content versus low, and how much better the water is absorbed if the soil is healthier.
So does that? I assume this also makes your crops better. I assume you probably get a bigger yield at the same time when you do that.
Yes, you can often. Changing practices in general in farming can sometimes change the yield. So I don't want to say immediately if you put in regenerative practices, it will always increase the yield, but that can tend to be the case. There's sometimes a few years of a period where it can be different, and that just comes with anything around changing specific practices.
Okay, awesome.
We also do things like precision agriculture, which would be one example is precision nitrogen application. So it's understanding how much nitrogen the plant needs exactly that will be the best for that plant. So that's good because then the plant doesn't get too little fertilizer or too much fertilizer. We don't waste fertilizer. It's usually great from an economic perspective because then not too much fertilizer is not being used. That's bad for the environment, and that's also bad for a pocketbook because that's totally wasted resources. So those are other cool things when I talked about the innovation. There's a lot of innovation in agriculture where we have better technology and better remote sensing to be able to improve some of this work to improve the economic profitability and also the environmental system.
Okay, that's awesome. That's very cool that you guys are doing. So what's your favorite thing you're doing with agriculture that's creating a difference and creating a better crop and a better sustainability for you guys?
I think my favorite thing that we're doing right now is called Bringing Rye Back to Kentucky. And we're doing this is through our Woodford Reserve brand. We're doing it in collaboration with Dendra Fund, which is a nonprofit that focuses on wood, water, and grain sustainability, closely affiliated with Brown-Forman, also with other companies in the Kentucky region, different suppliers, conservation advocates, and academia. And really the idea behind this is that rye used to be widely cultivated in Kentucky, and then over a number of years, it was no longer cultivated, and it's grown in other parts of the US or in Europe. And the idea is to bring rye back to Kentucky as a local crop. And doing that, it supports the environment and improves soil health, like I was talking about. It also provides another crop to farmers that they can have to be able to sell. And then it provides distilleries like those at Brown-Forman, like Woodford Reserve and others that are in the region with a local source of that crop so that we don't truck it in from or ship it in from other places. So that's a really exciting initiative. Woodford Reserve is part of that. The Woodford Reserve is also doing flavor trials about understanding the flavor profile of locally grown rye. So our VP Master Distiller, Elizabeth McCall, is really involved in that. And it's a really exciting project because it's not just Woodford Reserve or Dendra Fund. There are a lot of other partners who are really committed to this and farmers. And it's exciting to start to actually see it come to fruition. And I hope that one day it will be normal to buy rye from Kentucky, just like it was once before when it was widely grown.
How long do they think it'll be till we get a product that we could try that's really a Kentucky rye do they know like another 10 years, I think, or not quite that long we'll have to wait to try that? Or it's just kind of a, who knows, we'll see what happens, I think, because that's how it goes with whiskey experiments in general.
So I don't think it will be that long.
Okay.
It depends though. I think some of the locally grown rye is being put into whiskeys. If not now, then quite soon. Whether it's all locally grown rye
Sure.
at this point versus a mix of rye
Right.
that's maybe sourced from another location, that will probably take longer, but it will
Mhm.
start to be put into products.
Very cool.
I think certainly sooner than 10 years. I hope in 10 years or maybe beyond that, it will be just as normal to be able to buy that
That's
and
exciting.
have
Yeah,
it just be another option is really what I'm looking forward to seeing.
absolutely. So I want to switch over to your Woodford Double Oak because it's delicious.
It is delicious. That's a great product. And we were just talking about Woodford as part of this bringing rye back to Kentucky work. Our VP Master Distiller, Elizabeth McCall, is really engaged in so much of our sustainability work.
Okay.
I lead a sustainable agriculture working group at Brown-Forman that is developing a strategy on how we can build resilient, sustainable agricultural systems for our product. And she's on that and is such a demonstrates really the commitment that goes so high for some of this work to make sure that we are really doing the right thing and putting the best products that we can both now and into the future.
Absolutely. That's very cool. So are you going to be using the rye? Obviously, no. Now, are you guys also going to do Tennessee rye that's grown in Tennessee? Or are you already growing rye in Tennessee as well that you're doing the new Kentucky project?
This specific project is focused on Kentucky,
Okay.
though there are similarities between Kentucky and Tennessee that it's possible it could be replicated.
Okay.
But this specific one is
Just the Kentucky one. Okay.
focused on Kentucky.
Yeah, because it's like you guys surprised us all with this Jack Daniels rye a few years ago, and it's amazing. It's like, why didn't you have this before? And then this great surprise came upon us. So yeah, it's been really fun. All the innovation at Jack Daniels lately as well has been really great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to have an innovative brand where we can put out things like that.
Absolutely, for sure. Okay, so I know Andy was talking about packaging before. So, like the glass, what are you guys doing with the glass and the corks and reusability of all those type things?
Yeah, this is such a great question because one, I love this question because no one ever asks me about packaging. And I love talking about packaging because it's a really big focus area
Sure.
in sustainability. And if you think about our product, so we've talked about the wood that really goes into it and the ingredients that go into it. It's then bottled and it's put into something. And then from there, it's shipped around to retailers, and then our consumers take it home. And then eventually the consumer does something with it when they finish it.
Sure.
So packaging is so important, become essentially the start of the bottle all the way down to whether a consumer tosses it in a trash can or into recycling bin. So specifically for glass, there's a lot that can be done with glass. And we have a sustainable packaging strategy that we have public goals on, one on recyclability and reusability, and also focusing on increasing the amount of recycled content.
Okay.
So one thing on glass is whoever had put it in the chat was totally spot on that it's hard to, it's just heavy to ship. Glass is really heavy to ship.
Extremely heavy.
And when we're shipping so much of our products of Jack Daniels and everything else around the globe, because you can find us in so many different places, it's really heavy.
Yeah.
So we work with our glass vendors actually on lightweighting and seeing how much weight we can reduce from that bottle while maintaining that same characteristic of it.
Right.
And when we're at a scale like Jack Daniels, even a few grams here and there, where someone might not necessarily know the difference, makes a huge difference on that weight. It reduces our greenhouse gas emissions from shipping it. There's often a cost impact that it can typically be more cost effective to have a lighter bottle in terms of shipping it around the globe. So that's one thing that we can do is make the glass is lightweight and focus on that.
Okay.
Another area that we work on is increasing the amount of recycled content. So that's actually a public goal I mentioned that we have is really to increase that amount of recycled content. And the reason that we're focused on this is because it's a lot more energy intensive to create new glass than it is to use glass that's already been made, and it simply is recycled and goes back into the product.
Okay.
So there's a ton of opportunities around increasing the amount of recycled content in our products. We don't just do this with glass too. We do it with our PET, with our plastic bottles. So the smaller ones, the 50 ml, 100 ml, we just switched a few of those for our airline customers to 100% post-consumer recycled content, which reduced emissions by about 40%. And reduce the amount of plastic that's in there. So there's a lot that we can do around recycled content. And then the last area, or one of the last areas, is recyclability. So we also have a goal to make 100% of our primary packaging 100% recyclable by 2030. And we're really well on our way to be doing this. And the reason we're so focused on recyclability is because it needs to be easy and accessible for consumers when they're done with our product to be able to recycle it. Because we need enough recycled content from these consumers to then go back and use it in our products again. And so that's kind of an interesting second, or it's a different pillar, as sometimes on that consumer side, it goes with the design of the product and recyclability. But we've also done then some work on the consumer side. We did a initiative with the New Hampshire Liquor Commission called Bringing Back Jack, and we offered coupons to consumers if they brought back wine or spirits bottles. They got a coupon for a Jack Daniels. They brought it back to some specific state-controlled liquor stores, and I don't have the exact tonnage amount, but it was so many tons of bottles that were then brought back that might have otherwise been thrown away. So because we can make it easy for consumers to be able to recycle it, it reduces our greenhouse gas emissions globally. That's great for communities too. It's not filling up the landfills, but it also means we have more recycled content that can then go back to being made into bottles. And that's what we talk about when we look at closed loop systems and circularity. So packaging is a huge area. There's a lot to be done. I work really closely with our sustainable packaging team. I think they're awesome. They're so knowledgeable and such technical experts on this work. And it's been really exciting to start to put pen to paper on really what our options are and start to see them happen.
Yeah, I like to hear it. You give back a bottle, they give you more whiskey. That's a great plan. I like that plan. It's an awesome plan.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that would solve all of your problems with that. Just have everybody offer that plan. No one ever.
Yeah, exactly. So if you live in New Hampshire, if you're in this audience, it's the New Hampshire Liquor Commission partnership. Bring Back Jack.
Yeah, coupons for whiskey. I like it. That's perfect. All right, that's okay. What other initiatives? Yeah, so like the corks and stuff. Are you guys able to redo anything with the corks? Obviously, you guys can multiple. Are you able to do anything with the corks and tops at all, or are those just have to really just be tossed up as you can do with those?
Yeah, so corks is an interesting question. And the closures and the tops as well. So that really goes back to our recyclability goal. And so I spend a lot of time with our sustainable packaging team, or with our packaging team, looking at how we can make those corks and the closures recyclable. And so we have really close supply chain partnerships with our vendors in packaging. And it's very common. Well, we will just meet with them and we'll talk about how can we make this closure or this cork that's with the closure, how can we make it more sustainable? Can we use sustainable materials? How can we make it recyclable? Let's talk about the innovative options. And I think that's something great about Brown-Forman is we do have those really strong supply chain partnerships. So we're actively working on actually cork is one of them, but going back to this recyclability goal. Cork for me is also an interesting one. I did some research into this pretty recently because I also work on deforestation, and the cork is comes from a tree that doesn't actually have to be harvested. It's harvested from the bark, and then the tree regenerates. And so I know that's not necessarily on packaging, but it's going back to that forestry side that that's cool to be able to have the tree regenerate, and we put it into our product, and then we then make sure that we can focus on that recyclability of it to then at the end of the system, all the way down from the tree, that we can support the sustainability of it.
That's very cool. All right. Awesome. Yes, it's nice. I like that. All right, let's see here. What are your other tenants we have not talked about? Make sure we get all 6 of them in here.
Let's see. Well, we talked about We talked about water. I think we
Yes,
talked a
we
little
did.
bit about water. I've talked in general about circularity. I can talk about some of the byproducts though, and then I
Yeah,
think
let's
we can
talk
talk
about
about,
that. That's great. Let's talk
yeah,
about that.
and I think we can talk about climate, and those are probably some of
Perfect.
the last ones. So circularity is one of our pillars. I love that you're thinking about all 6 pillars because sustainability, it's really holistic. We don't just look at one topic and then go
Sure.
on to something else, another topic. They're also interrelated, especially circularity. So circularity for us is making sure that we have circular processes implemented at the company and implemented in our distilleries, and ensuring that we're also focused on zero waste. So all of Brown-Forman's global operations are zero waste to landfill, which means that we send less than 1% of all of our waste into the landfill. And so that's one way that we're super focused on making sure that we're not leaving waste behind. Another way that this comes into play is around our byproducts. And so, specifically for some of our sites, like for at Jack Daniels, we have, after the distillation process, a byproduct called stillage, which is essentially yeast and grain byproduct that's left over. We actually sell that to local farmers and they use it as cattle feed.
Very
We do
happy.
the same thing for Woodford Reserve, for our Slain Irish whiskey. The leftover byproduct from this grain is provided to local farmers to use as animal feed. And at an Old Forester distillery, what's something that's kind of cool is we actually collect all the barrel char, our wood dust, and anything else that's compostable. And it's provided to an industrial composting facility, and they make fertilizer. And then that fertilizer is used for whatever fertilizer purposes are, whether it's agriculture or something else. So in terms of byproducts, these are examples of like what a circular system would be, or a more circular system that we are taking a byproduct. We're not leaving it to just sit and rot and be a waste. It's really transformed into a value add product, and it's provided to local farmers to be able
Sure.
to support animal and animal feed. So that's an example of some of the ways that we're looking at this circularity, and really aiming to make our systems more circular, which means that we're focusing on producing less waste and making sure we utilize byproducts.
Now, the animals that feed that you, does it matter as far as like when the animals get the stuff from Jack Daniels or Brown for Woodford? Do you guys know which farm it goes to? Just to wonder, does the meat taste better, or is it really any difference? I just wonder. Like, I think I want the cow that had the Jack Daniels, or I had the cow that had the Woodford, just to see if there's a difference in how the quality of the meat is after they eat it. So,
I love that. What a marketing opportunity. Yes, Jack Daniels and our others certainly do know where it goes. I don't know if then ultimately that's traced down. I'm assuming that it's not a transparent thing that we would probably know of. But like I said, what a marketing opportunity.
absolutely, I think it'd be awesome. So, that's very cool. All right, and then so what's the last pillar we need to talk about then?
Yeah, well, we've almost saved one of our most important pillars for last, which is climate action.
All right.
So the company set really ambitious climate action goals in 2021 that are leading up to 2030 and then 2045. Okay. And ultimately, the company's ambition for all of our sites and for everything is to be net zero by 2045. And our interim goal leading up to that is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. So that is for our owned operations, all of our distilleries and our offices, and it's also for our supply chain and for the goods and services that come into Brown-Forman. And then as part of this goal, we do have another goal to source 100% renewable electricity by 2030. And we're actually well on our way to this goal. I think it's something that personally I'm very proud of at Brown-Forman. There are a lot of different solar and wind projects that we've done in the United States and also in Europe. Jack Daniels was the first distillery to partner with the Tennessee Valley Authority and Duck River Electric on their renewable energy program. So when that's operational, that will provide about 75% of Jack Daniels' electrical consumption. We have another wind project in Kansas that offsets about 90%, 95% of our US electricity usage. We have some work in Scotland and Ireland around renewable electricity. And it's really exciting to see some of these projects happen and be on the ground, and we can track how much renewable electricity that we use as a company, which has greatly reduced our greenhouse gas emissions.
Very cool. Man, I guess Canada certainly gets enough wind, to say the least, out there to solve that problem. Now with the with the TVA, are you guys using? Is that all geothermal pretty much? You guys are using there? If that's the renewable, or you guys using
nope, it is solar energy.
Oh, solar. Oh, okay. Very cool.
It's solar energy, so solar will be implemented. Provide 20 megawatts of solar energy, which is about 75% of the distillery's electrical consumption. So that should be operational shortly, and I think in 2025. And I'm super excited to see that happen because Jack Daniel's has such a strong sustainability story, and like I mentioned, around byproducts and circularity and our sustainable forestry initiatives. There's also a seed orchard at Jack Daniel's, and to have this solar energy be part of that just makes the product even more sustainable. And I think that's something that employees like us are really proud of. There's so much interest at the company on sustainability. We have green teams that anyone can be part of, whether your job is on sustainability or not. And we have so many dedicated people who are putting in so much time and effort into these projects. And it's really exciting to see when they're successful.
So eventually, will you guys make enough power from that to then also give back power to the community as well, hopefully at some point too?
That's a really good question. So right now, the way that these are structured, it's only 20 megawatts of energy. Beyond that, though, and there have been that's a common case though in producing renewable energy, is if you produce enough, it goes back to the grid. That's not how this is specifically structured, because it won't yet produce 100% of electrical consumption for Jack Daniel's. That would be the first goal, so we can produce 100% of electrical consumption. And then naturally, anything beyond that, it simply goes back to the grid.
Okay, Matthew Parks, how big of an investment footprint does this cost for Brown-Forman, just approximately? Any idea?
No, that's a really good question. I wasn't involved in the specific structures for procuring the renewable energy. They're a little bit complicated because we don't typically, I don't think, just invest in the renewable energy as like a one-time fee. They're often potentially changes in prices, or it's new contracts. So I actually don't know on that. Some of my colleagues who worked on this would certainly know, but this was before I started at Brown-Forman. Both of these really big ones. But I appreciate the questions, and I appreciate the interest in this work.
Absolutely.
I think it's super exciting that Jack Daniel's, 75% of it eventually will be powered by solar.
That's pretty wild, and that's considering how huge you guys are. That's a big number. Yeah, that's because how long have you worked for Brown-Forman for?
I've been at Brown-Forman for about 2.5 years. So I started in 2021, right after the company announced its sustainability commitments. So I was hired to help implement them, and I was actually the second person on the sustainability team. And we have six right now. So it's definitely grown in the past 2.5 years. There's been a lot more interest in sustainability. I think interest in the industry too. About how we can maintain and focus on the longevity and focuses on having these resources for the future.
Okay. So when you go to, I know you said, we were talking earlier, you get to visit sites. So what's your favorite place to visit when you're going to look at the sustainability projects? Which places do you enjoy the most going to see and helping out to get to these processes?
Well, it's really hard to choose.
Okay. Well, which ones do you enjoy? Let's do it that way. They don't have to name just one.
Yeah. So I think I really enjoy visiting Woodford Reserve. I love the product, but also it's a beautiful site. It's great to visit, and there's a lot of aspects of Woodford Reserve that are certainly sustainable, and it's cool for me. This is like so nerdy and technical, but I can go and see the recycling facility where they put all the glass, and it's a beautiful facility. And I think the fact that it's a brand, and all of our brands are focused on sustainability, but especially that Woodford Reserve is involved in this bringing rye back to Kentucky work, which has been one of a personal favorite projects that Brown-Forman has done. I think it's a great place to visit. And then in general, Jack Daniel's, simply because of the scale. To me, I got into sustainability because I wanted to work on impact, and I wanted to work for a company that had strong agricultural roots and was focused on this work and was truly committed. And that's what I've seen from Brown-Forman. And it's such an honor to be able to work here. And the scale of impact at Jack Daniel's, when we do something like a solar project, it has such a huge impact where we can now offset so much of that electrical consumption. So I love visiting Jack Daniel's too. And I know this is not one of our sites, but it is such an honor for me to be able to walk through the cornfields and the wheat fields and to see those crops and to walk with our farmers and to have lunch. To me, that's almost always the most special. And then I know that some of that is then going into our products that then we get to enjoy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, Matthew, so what is your favorite Brown-Forman product?
My favorite is the double oaked Woodford Reserve.
Solid.
I think it's excellent. Can't go wrong. We were talking about it. You can. It's easy to find. I think it's at a great price point.
Absolutely.
It's like a year-round product that I love. Brown-Forman has a lot of products though.
They do,
and kind of a wild card of what I love is Chambord, the blackberry liqueur.
Oh, I do like that one. Yeah, that is a good one. That makes some great cocktails.
It's a good product mixed in with cocktails or mixed in with champagne. So those are probably my two favorites, but really can't go wrong with the Woodford Double Oaked.
Yeah, good choice. Okay. So, anyway, so have you done anything with STR casks at all where you're reusing and recharging and stuff like that? Does that part of your guys' sustainability program at all when you guys are doing stuff like that, or not really?
Well, I would say that we're always open to trying new things, and that when we look at sustainability, nothing almost for the most part is off the table. Maybe something is too expensive, or it's too time consuming, or it's too long or too short. But we look at a menu of options, and I haven't specifically looked into that, but it's possible my colleagues have. But in general, we just have these menu of options on what we can do. And actually, I love it when people crowdsource stuff. I ran a project called Sustainability Impact Ideas. I wanted to hear from our own employees about ideas they had on sustainability. So we put out a call to global employees if they had a way we can make our processes or our systems more sustainable. And we crowdsourced some ideas from that. So I love it when we crowdsource ideas.
Absolutely. All right. I don't know the answer to that, Ben. Maybe. Do you know if Brown-Forman owned Ben Rick when they released the 13-year Madeira barrels? I have no idea. I don't know if you do either. So pretty
I don't know. No, I don't know that. That was certainly before my time. I'm certain that you could be directed to find that on our website. But no, that's that is definitely a good question.
Definitely. Good question, Ben, but we don't know. We're sorry. You'll have to look that one up on your own. I would guess probably prior, because you guys bought them, like 2018 or something like that when you got those 3 Scotch in your guys' portfolio. So probably prior, most likely, Ben. Okay, anybody else have any other questions? I know you said you have to go to a gym appointment, all that fun stuff here fairly soon, so probably 6 if you're not. Yeah, got your bottle in 2022. I would guess probably not then if that was the case. All right, let's see here. Anything else that we have not touched on you wanted to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I think that we talked about our sustainability commitments. I think why Brown-Forman is doing this work and some of our employees. And I love talking about this work. It's such a pleasure for me to be able to just come on and talk about something that I'm so passionate about and that's really so integrated into Brown-Forman's DNA.
Oh, that's a good question. So Ben wants to know, so we're talking a lot about the U.S. initiatives. Are you doing a lot of the same things in Scotland as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've definitely talked about a lot of the U.S. initiatives and some in Mexico, but we do also have sustainability initiatives in Scotland. And I know that some of the most recent initiatives are actually going to come out in our annual report that will be coming up about some really recent work that we did on renewable energy. But I also do the same agricultural work with our vendors in Scotland. So the work that I do is global, and I've worked with some of our malt vendors and understanding the regenerative practices and how we can improve those. So we have several different people who actually work on environmental health and safety for the Scotch distilleries. So we partner closely with them, my colleagues, to be able to make sure that what we have is the global strategy. It's then filtered down into some of the more local sites too. But we're doing work at the Slane Irish whiskey, at our Scotch whiskeys. Really, we focus on, because we're a global company, the strategy is intended to be global. So we do work there.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here. So, I love it. Are there any projects on the horizon you can't talk about? That's just it's a silly question. I'm sure there are.
I mean, I don't think there's anything groundbreaking that we'll have to share that I'm not allowed to disclose. I think certainly some of the strategy work that I'm doing around our supply chain sustainability is there's just not a lot to share yet, but it's not something that's like maybe super private. But I think in general, we'll start to be able to talk more and more about this work. And I think we'll start to have more successes too.
Yeah,
and I'd love to come back on, or you can hear from one of my coworkers who works in these different areas, and you could do a follow-up, and you can hear maybe about some of the projects if I wasn't able to talk about them tonight.
Yeah, get me getting to some of the super nerdy wood stuff and just, whatever, into the ridiculous levels of it and grains and all that fun stuff, because I find all that stuff super interesting to get to the nerd level, how all these things get put together and work and make all this awesome stuff that we love together. So yeah, that's fantastic. So, well, thank you very much. This has been awesome. Really informative, learned a lot of cool new things I didn't even know about whiskey and how it's getting made. That's really cool. So I'm glad you guys are doing all these things so that, like I said, may not be things that necessarily affect us directly now, but thankfully, like I said, it's our kids and grandkids that they can have the whiskeys to taste, because we have trees, we have better grain, all these things. So it's really great to have this. So, good times. But yeah, that's great. So if there's anything else, otherwise, if you guys have anything else, then we'll let her go, because I know she's got somewhere to be. So all that good stuff. But thank you very, very much. This was a great time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be able to come on and talk about the work that I love so much, and be able to share some of the work that we're able to do that I think is super exciting. I'm really glad you also thought it was exciting. I tried not to get too technical for some of this, but I really appreciated being here and having these thoughtful questions, and just
good when
getting to share some of the great work that we're doing.
Exactly. When you're passionate about it, and that helps a lot. It's and you want these things to all work, and you're getting to do what you love, which is really great. And you get to do it with a whiskey company, so you really can't go wrong. So
yeah, I think, one thing maybe I'll close with is that for the most part, this work is really fun. Yeah. Like, I feel really lucky that I work in an area that I love. And I hope that, next time you pick up one of these bottles, that you'll think about maybe the grain or the packaging that goes into it, because that's what I think about when I pick it up. But I'm working really to make a great product just more sustainable. And honestly, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to see you hopefully soon. And thanks for all your effort on this, and really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.